A year after my crushing divorce, my mother and sister cornered me in a crowded hospital hallway to mock my loneliness and brag that my ex-husband had just fathered a child with my former best friend. They stood there radiating smug victory, completely unaware that the infant in the intensive care unit was actually the centerpiece of a dark corporate scam they had secretly funded for $62,500. But their cruel celebration instantly transformed into absolute bone-chilling terror 5 minutes later when my ex-husband walked through the doors not as a proud new father, but as a trapped witness who exposed their entire conspiracy right in front of my father. My name is Diana, and I was the daughter who had to realize that when envy rots a family from the inside out, a mother and sister will happily treat a marriage like an illegal marketplace transaction. The entire house of cards came crashing down on a humid, gloomy morning in late October 2024. I was standing near the grand glass windows of the neonatal care wing at St. Jude General Hospital. The corridor smelled heavily of medicinal soap, and the low, rhythmic beeping of cardiac monitors echoed off the walls. I was there because my independent software company had just finalized the integration of the hospital's new emergency dispatch database. But my professional peace was shattered the exact second my mother, Lydia, and my younger sister, Evelyn, stepped out of the nearby elevator, flanked by my silent, wealthy father, Arthur. To truly understand why these two women had spent the last 12 months celebrating my absolute ruin, you have to understand the sick dynamic of the household I grew up in. Lydia was a deeply superficial, narcissistic woman who operated a high-society luxury event management firm, and Evelyn was her deeply insecure, fiercely jealous shadow. From the moment I launched my own tech startup without a single cent of my father's massive real estate inheritance, Lydia and Evelyn viewed my independence as an unforgivable act of defiance. But the real burning hatred started when I married my ex-husband, Ethan, a brilliant but financially struggling biomedical engineer. Evelyn didn't just want a successful partner of her own, she was obsessively consumed by the need to possess my life, my relationship, and the respect I had earned in the local community. A year prior, my marriage to Ethan had abruptly collapsed in a wave of high-conflict chaos. Out of nowhere, Ethan had become cold, defensive, and completely detached, culminating in him abruptly walking out of our home and filing for divorce. Within days, Lydia masterfully controlled the narrative, whispering to our entire extended family that I was emotionally unstable, financially reckless, and that Ethan had fled to the arms of my lifelong best friend, a woman named Chloe. Stranded and publicly humiliated, I refused to waste my breath arguing with them. Instead, I quietly spent the next 12 months leveraging my tech company's advanced data retrieval systems to monitor the digital footprint of Lydia's event firm and Ethan's private bank accounts. I knew Ethan's sudden betrayal made absolutely no logical sense, and 2 weeks before that hospital meeting, the raw data finally delivered the chilling truth. The trap naturally sprung when our paths crossed in the sterile hallway. Lydia and Evelyn were at the hospital for a routine specialist checkup for my father's knee. The moment Evelyn's eyes landed on me standing near the patient charts, a cruel, triumphant sneer spread right across her face. "Well, look who is wandering the halls entirely alone," Lydia smirked, crossing her arms arrogantly as she adjusted her designer coat. "Still single, Diana? I must say, your ex-husband did an absolute spectacular job leaving you behind in the dust. A broken woman like you was always meant to end up empty-handed. Evelyn stepped up right next to her, lowering her voice into a sharp, venomous whisper that practically vibrated with malicious satisfaction. He has a beautiful newborn son now, Diana, with Chloe, the woman you so foolishly called your best friend. They are living a perfect life together, completely happy, while you're still trying to act like a successful career woman. My father, Arthur, a proud old-school real estate tycoon who funded Lydia's lavish lifestyle, stood slightly behind them. He said absolutely nothing, his jaw set in a cold line, completely brainwashed by the months of lies his wife had fed him about my supposed infidelity and failure. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't let a single tear drop, nor did I give them the satisfaction of a defensive argument. I simply adjusted the digital tablet in my hands, looked directly into my sister's mocking eyes, and let out a calm, chilling smile. "Is that the exact little fairy tale she told you, Evelyn?" I asked, my voice carrying an eerily quiet clarity that caused Lydia's eyes to narrow in sudden suspicion. "What is that supposed to mean?" Evelyn snapped, her arrogant posture instantly stiffening. "The baby is real. Ethan completely loves her." "Oh, the baby is very real," I replied, glancing toward the heavy double doors at the end of the corridor. "And the real owner of that baby is about to walk through those doors right now." Exactly 5 minutes later, the magnetic locks on the double doors clicked open loudly. My ex-husband, Ethan, walked into the hallway. But he wasn't carrying flowers, and his face wasn't filled with the joy of a proud new father. He looked completely defeated, carrying a stack of legal termination notices from the hospital board. The exact moment his eyes landed on my mother and sister, he stopped dead in his tracks, his face draining of all color. Lydia and Evelyn's faces instantly turned a sickening, ghostly ash gray, as Ethan slowly walked over to stand right next to me, refusing to even look at them. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Lydia stammered, her voice dropping into a weak, panicked register as she frantically looked around the hallway. "You're supposed to be managing the biomedical lab downtown. Why are you in the neonatal wing?" "He doesn't manage the lab anymore, Mother," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet hallway like a razor blade. "And he isn't here to celebrate a happy family milestone with Chloe. He is here because 48 hours ago, my software company Flags triggered an internal investigation with the hospital's compliance board regarding an illegal, private corporate transaction." Ethan hung his head in absolute shame, staring down at the linoleum floor. "It's over, Lydia. The entire arrangement is blown wide open. She has the actual transaction numbers." What transaction? "Arthur, don't listen to her. She's completely unhinged." Lydia hysterically shrieked, turning to her husband, her hands trembling violently as her knees began to buckle under the sudden weight of the exposure. "Dad, you don't need to listen to me. You just need to look at the screen in your hand," I said, pointing to my father's smartphone, which had just buzzed with a massive, encrypted data file I had forwarded to his private email. My father, Arthur, quickly pulled out his phone, his brow furrowing deeply as his eyes scanned the certified banking ledgers of Lydia's event management firm. The spreadsheets explicitly highlighted a massive hidden deduction of exactly $62,500 disguised as a high-end floral consultancy fee. "Your loving wife and her golden daughter didn't just support Ethan's career," I continued, letting every word ring out clearly for the entire room to hear. "In January of last year, Ethan's private engineering lab was on the absolute brink of foreclosure due to an undetected corporate lawsuit. Evelyn and Lydia approached him with a sick, calculated proposition. They offered him a clean, wire-transferred lifeline of $62,500 from your corporate accounts, Dad. The entire corridor fell into a dead, suffocating silence. The condition of that $62,500 buyout was monstrous, I said, staring directly into my mother's terrified face. Ethan had to intentionally ruin our marriage, file for a sudden divorce, and participate in a staged public relationship with my former best friend, Chloe, who is actually Evelyn's high school roommate and was paid a separate cut to act as the scapegoat. The ultimate goal? Evelyn wanted to step in as the comforting savior 6 months later, marry Ethan, and take over his newly funded biomedical patents under her own name to look successful in front of high society. You literally bought my husband for $62,500 just to feed your daughter's sick, competitive ego. Diana, shut your mouth. This is a private family matter. It was an investment loan. Lydia yelled hysterically, her face twisting into a mask of pure panic as she realized her entire financial world was tied to Arthur's reaction. My father, Arthur, stared at his phone screen, his face rapidly turning from pale to a deep, dangerous shade of crimson. The cold, hard data clearly proved that Lydia had forged his secondary corporate signature to authorize the wire transfer to Ethan's failing company. He slowly looked up from the screen, staring at the woman he had married with a look of absolute, unadulterated disgust. "Lydia," my father whispered, his voice shaking with a terrifying, deep rage that I had never heard from him in my entire life. "You committed corporate forgery? You embezzled $62,000 from our family business just to fund a sick, manufactured plot to destroy your own daughter's life? Arthur, sweetheart, please. I did it to protect Evelyn's future. Diana was always so independent. She didn't need us." Lydia sobbed, reaching out to clutch his arm, but my father violently shoved her hands away, stepping back as if she were a venomous snake. "Do not touch me, you disgusting, manipulative thief," my father roared, his voice booming off the glass windows of the hospital wing. He looked at Evelyn, who was now weeping hysterically against the wall, her superficial illusion of high society victory completely shattered into absolute dust. "You are both parasitic monsters. I am changing the locks on the estate before the sun goes down today." Without waiting another single second, my father turned around, completely ignoring their cries, and walked straight out of the hospital corridor, dialing his senior corporate divorce attorney before the elevator doors could even close. The revenge was absolute, immediate, and completely devastating to their entire existence. True to his word, exactly 48 hours after that confrontation in the hospital corridor, my father packed his bags, completely moved out of the family mansion, and filed for a highly contested, aggressive divorce on the grounds of egregious corporate fraud, grand larceny, and marital embezzlement. Because the financial data and digital wire transfer logs I provided left absolutely zero room for a creative legal defense, my father successfully invoked an infidelity and fraud clause in their prenuptial agreement. Lydia was stripped of all access to the family's real estate assets, leaving her entirely ruined and forced to liquidate her personal luxury jewelry just to pay off the massive corporate restitution fines to my father's firm. Evelyn's entire dream of high society dominance completely dissolved into ash. Ethan's biomedical patents were seized by the hospital board due to the ethical fraud investigation, leaving him completely broke and legally banned from operating a commercial lab in the state. Chloe fled the state to avoid a corporate conspiracy lawsuit, leaving Evelyn completely isolated. Within months, my mother and sister were forced to move out of their luxury suburban neighborhood and rent a cramped, outdated 2-bedroom apartment on the industrial side of the city. their names permanently blacklisted from every event circle and country club in Atlanta. Now, I stand inside the freshly renovated, state-of-the-art emergency dispatch center at the hospital, watching the system run flawlessly under my company software. Standing right next to me is my father, Arthur, who has completely cut off my toxic mother and sister, dedicating his time to helping me advise young tech entrepreneurs on corporate ethics. The toxic, envious shadows of the people who shared my blood are permanently gone, replaced by a life built on authentic success and real integrity. My mother and sister tried to use a $62,500 transaction to humiliate my existence, steal my joy, and break my spirit, but by keeping my head clear, documenting the cold, hard data, and letting the absolute truth strike at the exact second they felt completely untouchable, we didn't just protect my future, we permanently dismantled their entire world. My personal advice to anyone listening to this: never allow the toxic, competitive jealousy of your own mother or siblings to make you question your worth when they try to orchestrate a public campaign to celebrate your apparent defeat. It is a deeply painful, heartbreaking reality to accept, but a biological parent or sister can sometimes view your independent success and personal peace as a direct threat to their own fragile egos, turning them into cold, calculated monsters who will literally put a price tag on your heartbreak just to see you crawl back to them for help. A shared last name or a birth certificate does not buy someone a free license to treat your marriage like a commercial transaction, and you should never waste your valuable energy screaming back at people who are driven by pure, unadulterated envy. When toxic relatives try to manufacture a false narrative of your failure, maintain an absolute, dignified silence. Focus entirely on building your independent path and let the cold, hard data expose their inner corruption in its own perfect time. True family isn't defined by the people who share your genetic DNA while actively conspiring to sell out your happiness for a corporate payout. It is defined solely by the genuine loved ones and supportive partners who value your dignity, respect your boundaries, and stand fiercely as an unbreakable shield by your side when the wolves gather. Walking away from a toxic dynamic and allowing the natural, legal consequences of a bully's own malice to completely ruin them is not a cruel act. It is your absolute right to self-preservation. Take this story as your ultimate wake-up call to stand tall, trust the power of documented truth, and aggressively put your own peace first today, because your independent future is worth far more than any toxic family tie.